Hey everyone, I'm Steve Madden. I'm the editor at large for MM+M, and you're watching part of our 2026 Agency 100 video series. My guest here today is Jami Eidsvold, CEO and founder of Smarty Social. Jami, welcome.
Thank you.
So we're here to talk about a cool new development from Smarty. Why don't you tell me a little bit about it?
Sure. We have been, over the course of the last couple of years, we've been focused quite a bit on figuring out how to tell good stories for our healthcare clients. And, as so much content is coming out into the world that is AI generated and, getting filled with all our feeds, we kind of tried to step back and think about how do we make content that will stand out and connect. And so we've been focusing a lot on, video content production, meeting patients and clinicians where they are in real life, and then turning those into a storytelling ecosystem for our clients that they can tap into and create tons of different types of content after the shoot. So it's been something we've been working on and that I'm pretty passionate about, that we're getting ready to officially launch this year.
And what's it called?
It's called the StoryEngine.
Excellent.
Yeah.
StoryEngines. I love stories.
Yeah.
The thing about what you guys do so well is that you do tell stories through social media, but gathering the information for social media and telling stories, you can get a ton of stuff.
Right.
And part of the question becomes, what do we do with all of this?
Right.
How do we make sure that we use every single bit of what we gather? How do you do this, and how does StoryEngine help?
Yeah, that's how this idea actually came to be. Is, I was attending so many shoots for our clients, and they're investing a lot of money for these productions. Ultimately, we're shooting for a campaign, and there's an objective that we're getting to for, social is very short form video content. And I would sit on set and hear all these amazing kind of sound bites and story arcs show up in our interviews, and then realize half of it, more than half, ends up on the cutting room floor. So our thought was, okay, if we can go into every shoot with an objective to shoot beyond the brief, really understand what story arcs we want to capture, and then take the content after the campaign launches and we put it into an AI-powered vault, and we call it the Story Vault. And we tag it with metadata. We know when we shot it, who the doctor was, do we have consent, all the different kind of key story arcs, so that when we want to create more content for the ongoing kind of evergreen content kind of pillars, we can go back into the vault and repurpose that content over and over again. So that's how it evolved.
So you're creating this for multiple platforms, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how does the Story Vault help you do that? Like, are you sitting on set? Like you said earlier, you go on the shoots. You sitting on set saying like, oh, that's going to be an awesome 15-second TikTok.
Yeah.
Do you think like that?
That's how it started.
Yeah.
That's how it started, sitting there kind of like noting all these pieces of gold that we would hear on set with our clients. But now we actually go into it architecting the story arcs that we're trying to get. So it starts with a process of, instead of our traditional like content strategy, now we do a story mining strategy. So thinking about their key audiences, what motivates them, what questions they're searching for answers for, and then really kind of developing these like story arcs that we want to capture. So going into a shoot, even if it was for a very specific campaign, we're actually asking all the questions that can bring out some of the stories from those arcs, knowing intentionally that we're going to bank them in the vault. And a lot of times, like, we'll interview clinicians, providers, and we can use their content both for peer-to-peer, but also for consumers. So we go into every shoot now asking way more questions than we had originally started with the intention of putting it in the vault so that we can tap it later.
So one of your biggest and best clients is Invisalign, right? So with a company like that, or a client like that, you need to think about, as you said, producing content that's relevant to HCPs, in this case orthodontists, I guess.
Right, dentists, yeah.
And dentists, but also to consumers.
Correct.
And I have to think you're probably also, I know you've got a lot of great celebrity endorsers in the NFL in particular. You probably have to think about them too, making this attractive to them. How does Story Vault help you sort of optimize your time at a shoot and drive up the ROI? ROI.
ROI.
Right? ROI. by producing the content that's relevant for each of those three audiences?
Yeah. So what we kind of set out to do was use every opportunity that we are shooting content from a social perspective, whether that's at an event or it could be a conference with their doctors, or it could be the Super Bowl. We treat every single thing as like a content capture opportunity playground. So going into it, knowing sometimes, with a provider, you've got a limited amount of time, especially when you've got an influencer or a creator that is only contracted for a small amount of time. You have to really go in with a very tight shot list and a good set of questions. So, shooting for what we need to produce quickly, which for social, we're producing stuff on the fly, but knowing that we're going to bank some of that for future campaigns. And sometimes you don't know what those campaigns are going to be. So identifying those like story arcs that are threads that we can pull through as the brand wants to bring forward, new testimonials about certain, features that they want to push or benefits or RTBs. We've got that all in the vault now from all kinds of voices. And then when we put it in the vault, we'll attach it with their contract and their, consent forms, so we know usage rights and things like that also.
So how much easier has this made your life, and how much happier has it made your clients?
Yeah. I think it's made our lives easier because there's always sort of an ask that comes out that is like, hey, remember that shoot we did? Or do you have anything where we have some providers that are talking about XYZ, and it would take hours and hours and hours of sifting through things and, going through drives. So now, because it's all kind of tagged in the system, we can kind of find clips based on keywords. We can find clips based on facial recognition of the who was talking, things like that, and find those clips really easily. And then for our clients, I think is rather than investing in another expensive production, now we can kind of look at what we have first, and the speed at which we can, produce a campaign for them is, lightning fast now compared to, having to really dig through and see if what we've got. But also it helps them save time from, not having to invest in a big production because, their doctor's time is valuable, patient time is valuable, all of those things.
So one of the things about AI is like, yes, it's a great tool, and it can really help you. But if you rely on AI to create the content, you lose that human element.
Right.
And when you're talking about healthcare stuff, the human element is vital.
Right.
How do you make sure that this powerful AI component to the Story Vault doesn't take over?
Yeah.
And push the human element out of it? How do you make sure it stays human?
Well, because it starts with a human story, right? So if we're always starting with a real person's story, and that's like what the context that we can give to AI to work with, then, we're always focused on, the building the trust and the equity of a human first. Really for us, we're only leveraging the AI component to make that content indexable and findable and able to, search hours and hours and hours of footage to find that one thing, that we remember from set or that, hits a certain point. So I think what it does is it makes the asset of what you've captured compoundable and more valuable, but it's still a human asset, So we always kind of say like, I've worked in social for 14 years running our agency, and, it's all everything's algorithms, right? Social's based on an algorithm. So is, the AI engines that are out there that people are asking questions to and looking for answers. So, chasing the algorithm with like the latest trend or, what have you, to me, I think the best algorithm is human. So if it's humans connect to humans, right? So if the content is good and it connects and we're really using the questions we're asking to answer the questions in the way that people are asking for them, and not trying to dig into here's the claim, here's the message, here's that, but actually really asking good questions and getting real answers, then I think the algorithm and the way people search and discover content now can be best served. that way.
What advice would you give to a client coming to you, like let's say it's a biotech company that's coming out with a new molecule or something, and they want to get the word out? What advice would you give that client in regards to what StoryEngine can do for them?
Yeah, and honestly, the reason why I started it and started to build this was because we work with a lot of startups, and they come to us with very little assets. They might have, some clinical papers and studies, and maybe a testimonial or two from an executive or what have you, or one patient. And for us to be able to get a campaign up or build that trust and credibility, not having assets to work with that have real people is really difficult. So, but a lot of times, it's hard to invest in production. Production is expensive. So the goal for us was, how can we make production scalable and easier for them to invest in? And by providing like an ROI on like, hey, this one shoot that you invest in is going to give us tons and tons of content that can last us throughout the year, is to invest in that, and starting with, real humans talking about what that advancement can do for them or change their life or their practice or, the quality of care. So if we can get to that and capture that to start versus trying to make something out of nothing, we're going to be able to drive better performance. You're going to get, better engagement. You're going to build trust out the gates. So I think what I started doing was actually saying, if you're going to invest in anything, invest in this one kind of asset. Let us do some of the work to understand the stories we want to tell, and let us capture them, because that asset will compound over time.
Do they always understand the value of narrative, the value of story?
I think more so now. I think storytelling has become quite a bit of a buzzword, right? And I think, originally, I think a lot of our clients, at least in brands, were really focused on, we have to tell the claims because, everyone's regulated and there are certain things you can and can't say. And I think, what resulted was a lot of content out there that is rehearsed, scripted, inauthentic, because you're so focused on getting the messaging right. But I think if you invest in a process of really having a conversation and knowing, how to get the right things out to communicate things in a safe and compliant way, those stories become really meaningful. And once you can show a client what that looks like, then they'll usually come to us and say, okay, we want to do more. But I think the traditional way that they're thinking about it is talking head, testimonial, doctor in their practice. And there are other ways that you can get, that storytelling out in a really authentic way.
How do you reconcile the need to conform to the regulations with the ability to tell a story that seems authentic?
Yeah.
Because so much marketing in this space and so much advertising in this space doesn't necessarily feel authentic. How do you ensure authenticity?
We invest a lot of time in the interview process, and, we understand, right? Like our production team, they all are ingrained with our clients' business as well, so they understand what we can and can't say. It's not like we're kind of sending in a director or a producer that, is just trying to get like the nice shot and the great story. They understand like our client's business. So we know what we're trying to get to and how to ask the right questions to get there. And I think that's really important. So we shoot for the story first, and then, kind of keep asking the questions to get to the safe and compliant answer, I guess. And, for some of our clients, like their claims are consistently changing too. So, shooting things in multiple ways, asking the question in multiple ways allows us, when, that claim slightly shifts later, to be able to go back and find something that is still compliant and works.
Jami, it seems that the StoryEngine gives you the ability to sort of set content strategy on its head, instead of saying like, okay, here's what the strategy is, here's what we need. you have the ability to go get what you need, do like a massive harvest, and then figure out the strategy. Is that true?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think, for ages, especially where I sit in social, it was what's the platform, what's the content strategy for that platform, platform specific, and how many times do we have to post to be successful? And I think what's changed so much over the last couple of years is, your platforms now are search engines, and the path to discovery happens in multiple places. It's not linear. It's not on one channel. Targeting has become really difficult with privacy, especially in our space. So I think really thinking about what is the content that people want to consume and the questions they need answered, and then grabbing and capturing that content wherever we can at scale. And then it becomes more of a distribution strategy. So where can we put it so that it's found when at the right moment, when someone's searching for answers. So
the right piece of content at the right time in front of the right person.
Yeah. Like the organic part of content has become so much more important in this age right now, especially with it, especially social content tied to SEO and AEO and all of those things. It's how people discover information is finding them and putting the content there in the right moment, tagged with the right metadata, things like that. So now a content strategy is what are all the story arcs that we want to create, and then where can we put that content so that it can be found, appropriately.
Right. Jami, you've used this phrase, the human algorithm. What exactly does that mean? Because it sounds like a contradiction in terms.
We live in an algorithmic world now in all of marketing, and every algorithm is built different depending on what platform you're on. So I guess what we've been trying to lean into is that, if you can connect at a human level in the kind of journey of discovery, the content that actually gets watched beyond so many seconds, that gets engaged with, that gets clicked on,
that gets remembered,
and gets remembered, is dictated by a human and not, by an artificial kind of algorithm. So, you can get success chasing the algorithms and, getting all the clicks, but if you're really, especially in healthcare, when you've got long patient journeys, long consideration cycles, where you're not getting, one click to, you've got to go through a provider and you've got to go through multiple channels, leaning into the human algorithm and us learning from what stories really resonate and connect, and then, recutting more of those stories. That's sort of the human algorithm that we're trying to lean into and learn. And the only way you get that is through a closed loop, through the way that we do it is, once we put content out there and we've kind of seen the performance, we put paid behind it, we understand what works, and then we kind of go back and, cut various versions of it and put that back into the system. So really leaning into the storytelling side of it and what stories connect kind of allows us to derive that algorithm for us.
And constantly monitoring how things are performing. That worked, that didn't work, that worked, do it again.
Yeah, that's
part of it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what's different, right? Like sometimes, a lot of companies get hired for production. We get hired just for production and campaign work. But when you don't get to control the distribution cycle and get the data on the back end, then you're just kind of producing a set of assets to a brief and a scope. And that's sort of where they live and die. And so this is all about making like production kind of return back on that investment. So if we can own the distribution strategy and the page strategy, and then take the analytics from that, bring it back into the system, cut more assets, that's where we're most successful.
And that's the closed loop you were talking about. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I think the worst thing for anyone who shoots campaign work or whatnot is delivering it and never knowing, did it perform? What performed, so that when you go back and decide how to make more content out of it, if you don't have that data, then you're just kind of taking a shot in the dark, right?
Yeah.
Can
you tell me a little bit about one of the things that it sounds as if the StoryEngine drives is efficiency. So in other words, and I'm just making these numbers up, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's say that you shoot 2 hours worth of video, right?
Yeah.
The goal really is to have 2 hours worth of usable assets that come out of that, right?
Right.
Now that's not always possible, but do you feel like StoryEngine has driven that efficiency?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, we have done where we have gotten, 12 doctors in one day at a conference to shoot with us and been able to cut, compilations from that, individual testimonials, and then kind of new campaigns, bring that in. So I think as long as you're, it starts with the brief stage. Like, as long as you're going in with a brief with the objective to capture more than what the first output is, that's where the strategy becomes so important, to make sure that there's like value being created, and that every shoot that you do, in my opinion, it builds this vault that it just becomes more and more valuable over time. And we've been able to go back years and find, a piece of content that we shot with a patient that said the exact thing that we needed, someone to say for a new campaign, and pull it out, But that only works if you're putting your content in an indexable way into, a platform, a digital asset management system that allows you to find those things.
Well, Jami, this has been great. Really appreciate you coming in and talking about StoryEngine. Sounds like a great product. Sounds like a really good idea, and I wish you the best with it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Thanks for watching, everyone. You've been watching another installment in MM+M's 2026 Agency 100 video series. Come back. There'll be lots more. See you soon.